Well, fortunately, we never stopped really. We just changed to virtual like everybody else, right? It didn't really stop. So we were in residencies in the spring that we, uh, half we got to finish because, you know, we communicated with them and they were open. And so we created that would still achieve some of the same goals. The other half we didn't get to because the school, they weren't ready. They couldn't manage it. They needed time to figure out what to do themselves. So we were not able to finish those. But creating programming by just asking what is your need and how can we best meet it? And it took some time to figure that out, right? When we started, our very first lesson for one of our residencies was about 40 minutes. And the teacher said, oh no, I can't do that. It's too long for my kids right now. And so it ended up that they were about 5 minutes, but the lessons 2, 3, and 4 were much shorter. But she was very pleased and she was able to have her students engage in a way like virtually because they were virtual too. And then it became a challenge of the kiddos not having access to what they needed to send in their responses to our 5-minute lessons. And so we knew that we had provided the very best we could and we were very responsive to their needs. So we also started right away with what we call Message Monday, Bold Online series, which included Message Mondays, Throwback Thursdays, and Family Fun Fridays. And part of that Family Fun Fridays and our Message Mondays actually were young people who were a part of our training program that would have had more opportunity if we had face-to-face programming. They were able to participate in some of that virtual programming right away with performances and such. As far as our summer program, which is a big part of what we do, we now serve maybe 100, a little more than 100 kiddos in just the summer program that we have. It's 2 4-week sessions. Of course, I went back and looked at our plan from about 5 weeks ago, and we were face to face starting now. And it changed, right? Everybody has had 40 models of everything, or okay, 40 is too many, 10 models, right? We started out with a model and the next week, it changed. We had a model up until this recent week where the numbers surged. And so we're re-evaluating, always re-evaluating and open to what the world presents, because of course we want to follow what our local, state, government officials are saying. We pay attention to what other theaters are doing because we know they are amazing and smart and doing great work. So we try to pay attention to what other folks are doing. We have communicated with TCG, Theater Communications Group, and what they're looking at about going back to work face-to-face. So we evaluate all of that in our decision making. So as far as our Young Performers Summer Program, we have lots of programming. This summer, we have about 15 summer classes that are virtual. So I guess what I'm really saying is, don't think of it as going back to work. Like, we can still be working. We can still be working. It's just how it looks is different. And that may mean, right, like when I did our teacher training for our Young Performers program, I had to have a big chunk on Zoom and how to best optimize all of the things, the breakout rooms, the polls, how to interact in a way that makes sure your students stay engaged, the use of breaks and the use of questions and all of that. So there was just a shift. Everybody's using that word, right? Shift, pivot, okay. A shift in how we presented the material. It wasn't just about content, right? And including an even stronger, I mean, we always include it, but including an even stronger social emotional component about how are you? How is your world? How is life for you? And then breaks, because, right, we can sit here for 2 hours, but we all after about 30, 40 minutes. So making sure that you take those breaks because they're at home and may want to get up and wiggle and come back. So we are planning in coming back face to face. We do have some things scheduled for the fall that are part of our touring program. Productions, we have a piece that's set up to go to Miller in September. Now we know October, right, is supposed to be a big resurgence. And so we're just optimistic that that happens, and we're at the mercy of like everybody else. So we have a couple of opportunities that are out of state where we're already scheduled and already have contracts. And we've even talked with those folks since this began, and they're still planning to go forth. Now, of course, in doing that, we will have the conversations with them. And as we create work for our in-house spaces, what does social distancing look like? What does mask wearing look like? When we get in the rehearsal space in our own space here to prepare those things, making sure that folks, dare we say, follow the rules, but that folks are very aware and are reminded frequently. So some of those very specific things include, we, at the beginning of this, took all the codes out of the door so no one could get in the building except for the leadership. And then we are re-entering codes as projects present. Instead of anyone being able to come and go, that was just a safety thing. We have agreed that we will rehearse in our larger space. It's, I don't know, about 8,000 square feet. It's a very big room, so that there is much more room between us as we rehearse and prepare, making sure that the productions we select have less interaction with people intimately, okay? So as folks enter the room, into the theater, making sure that hand sanitizer is present everywhere, and making sure that we provide them with masks if they cannot provide their own, right? We've been in this long enough, everybody probably has one. But even prior to getting to rehearsal, something that, let's talk about staff going back to work. We are going back in a staggered fashion, such that right now, 2 people go in at a time, and even that is staggered. So if someone goes in from 8 to 2, someone else might come in from 1 to 5. And then everyone, upon returning to work, and that'll happen to adding people over the next few weeks, so that it's all of us, but that won't happen probably in September. We're all encouraged to be tested. It can't be mandated, of course, but we're encouraged to be tested, so that has happened. As folks return to work, they're giving a kit with gloves, masks, what else? Gloves, masks, sanitizer, and there's one other something that's in those kits that you're requested to utilize frequently throughout the day. Beyond the staggered return to work and what's happening with the building itself, we will have, in terms of touring and education, we have decided not to have any face-to-face this summer, and we will go to face-to-face with children. We're looking at our winter program, which is at winter break, and who knows what winter break will really look like now, right? But winter break, and then decreasing the number of kiddos who are in those groups. We normally would have 30 with a teacher and an assistant. Now we're looking at perhaps 1 teacher and maybe a max of 10 to 15 maybe, and doing those in our bigger space so that they're in the large room, no classes held in a small room. And then folks stay together. There is no, you're not with multiple teachers, and you stay with the same group of kiddos the whole time that you're in the building. 2 minutes, great. I don't know when that came up, so so as far as what else we have planned with touring. So I've talked a little bit about what shows will look like in terms of rehearsal and return to the building. And I've talked a little bit about what our young people will look like when they come back to the building. In the meantime, there's discussion about the hybrid, right? Do we bring in just the cast to record them doing something so that we can share it in that way? And that's still part of the discussion. We have not come to any full agreement on that. And as far as audience coming to see shows, of course, we're following the mandates, right? We're not anticipating having audiences in the building until January, February. And even for our touring shows that we do in-house, having an audience come, again, the larger space, social distance seating, because that space can hold 400 people. We are comfortable saying 6 feet apart, and so what? We can only have 50, that's okay. Or only have 75, and doing the productions that don't require a lot of intimacy, again, with small cast. That's true of even our performing arts group. So yeah, I look forward to answering any questions. I know I kind of jumped around and gave you a big overview, but those are some of the things in place.
Yeah, that's really, really helpful, Rachel. Thank you so much for your presentation. Next, we'll hear from Jennifer Summers. So Jen, if you want to just jump right in.
Sure. I'm going to talk not about Houston Valley as a whole organization, just specifically about our academy and our education and community engagement programs. But I know some stuff, so if in the questions you have, yeah, if you have questions about that, I might be able to answer. In March, when HISD closed down, we followed suit, and our journey was to immediately start to do recorded content, and then within a couple of weeks, we were piloting doing classes on Zoom, and then over the course of the rest of our spring semester, and I'm talking about the academy side now, we moved away from recordings and more fully to live classes via Zoom. And we're very fortunate that we often do our classes or almost all the time do our classes to live music, and our music team worked on creating a technology where, I don't know if there's any other dance, oh yes, Alice is here. The lag time in Zoom means that teacher and musician are sometimes not on the same page. So we've got a technology developed where they're synced, which is really helpful when you're working on musicality and rhythm. Couldn't transfer that entirely into education and community engagement because most of our partner organizations and districts were not using Zoom for, I guess, mostly because they didn't feel it was as safe. So let me be hard. I'm going to start just with Academy. So we basically made the decision. We had hoped we pushed our summer program because we usually invite over 300 people from around the world to do a 6-week intensive here. So we had pushed it off in hopes that it could ultimately be in person. But in May, we pulled the plug and decided that all of our summer programming would be virtual. So we are right now in the middle of a 3-week younger persons program, Monday through Friday classes. Adjustments that we made for the virtual world are shorter days for a couple of reasons. One is just student engagement. How long can they be in front of the screen? 2, how long can they take over their homes? If for families that have more than one kid, over here we have the ballet program, and over here we have soccer tutorials, and we really just, how long can they take over their family's kitchen, essentially. So we've definitely shortened the days. Starting on July 6th, we have our former 6-week intensive is now a 5-week program, and again, we're trying to be as flexible and adaptable for our students and their families as we've asked them to be in support of us. So normally you would just sign up for all the weeks intensive, and we're trying to be as flexible as possible. You can come and go week to week. Our enrollment is, I would say, down. There are dance studios in town who have reopened, and we did not feel as an organization that we could do that. We're working with a team from Houston Methodist who's advising us for our company dancers. Unfortunately, we're a physical art form, and you have to be in proximity with one another to do this. And so they're advising us on for our company, for return for our staff in this building. We have a business, we have a school, and we have a professional dance company as well as a dorm. So that's a lot of different things in one space. I'm going to share my screen if I can and share with you. Don't pay attention to how very many windows I have open all the time. And I'm not going to pop into my slideshow simply because I was having trouble with that yesterday. So presented this, and I should say, preface presentation with saying we got approval from Methodist to come to at least, assuming things can level off again in Houston, to return to some in-person classes in the fall. That's happening for the school before it's happening for the company. So today we are piloting trying to have a pianist inside the same room as the teachers. We hope on August 10th to do a hybrid adult intensive, which would give us a chance to practice the routines and procedures we've established for our return in the fall. So I'll just take you through that. And then hopefully on August 24th, we do not have the capacity, given the grouping sizes, et cetera, that we need, that we can't make everything in person. It's definitely, we're coming back as a hybrid. So basically taking you through, this is the place where I collect all my information. Is not a fancy presentation, but basically intensive cleaning protocols throughout the building, sanitizing stations at all the entrances in each studio. We have the privilege of being part of an organization called Dance USA, which has been since the pandemic started, every other week collecting groups of school directors and education and community engagement directors from around the country, sharing best practices. So I'm going to show you some stuff that I can't, that I begged, borrowed, and stole from folks that are already open in Atlanta, in Arizona, in Wisconsin. Our arrival, we're looking into a screener. You know, this is the one other, this health check is one that some of our colleagues are using, that we require families to complete every time they came to the building. So I don't know what those questions are quite yet. For staff, that we have very limited staff in the building right now, very limited numbers of dancers that can come in, 1 studio per dancer per day. I should flip that. 1 dancer per studio per day. They have to do a self-screen. When we come back as a school, we'll be using something like this, where you cannot come in the building unless you've submitted your screen. We'll be doing 3 separate entrances with staggered arrival times for groupings. So, right, you know, again, this is all a work in progress. So it sounds really all figured out, but we're doing our best. That we would have at 4 o'clock, say, 3 groups could arrive at 3 different entrances, and then at the next time slot, blah, 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 the next groups can come. There would be a temperature, in addition to checking to see that they've completed the digital screening, we would move into, they'd have to do a temperature check, and then only use stairwells, right? So we have staff and dancers presumably will be in the building, so how do we keep everybody apart from everybody else? That's one of our challenges. Where am I? Yes, we're not going to allow them to use lockers or showers or the dressing room space, or restrooms only. So we have this idea that borrowed from Atlanta Ballet, that if you've passed the screening, then a green flag goes up and the parent can leave. This sounds like a little bit of a nightmare, except that the classes are going to be so small that actually it's probably only a backup of about 8 to 10 cars at each entrance. So I think it's actually doable even downtown. Again, I'll reiterate, I'm saying think. The students will enter the building, sanitize, get their temperature checked, go upstairs, sanitize before they enter the studio. I'm going to skip the next slide because that's a work in progress. For the classes in studio, when we were doing the math about in order to have enough kids in the space to make it really possible to do this at all, everyone has to wear personal protective equipment, which is that may not be as big of a deal for a visual art group, but for dancers, it's a consideration. So I just got approval this week. If everyone wears PPE, then and we keep the teacher and the pianist completely isolated from the students, which again isn't ideal as a teaching, as dance teachers like to touch and interact with their students. But in order for our teachers to be able to teach more than 1 cohort of students, which we absolutely have to have, if we don't have enough faculty to have 1 teacher per cohort, then we have to isolate them in the front of the room, which I'll show you in a minute, and everyone has to wear PPE. The studios there'll be marks on the bars, and then a grid taped out, and people, at least initially in the fall, dancers will not be able to leave their grids. Once we get to the middle, they won't be able to leave their spot. So we're looking at not giant movements. You're in your grid space, essentially. There's some issues, we're lucky to have live musicians, but of course that means a shared piano, and how do you clean that without ruining the piano, blah, 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 blah. So we're looking at potentially having only 2 pianists per piano per day. This gives you a sense of what we're sort of mapping out at the front of this. This is a panoramic shot. We'll move the pianist over to one side, the teacher on the other. And let me show you a different studio, because you can see we are teaching from the studios now with the Zoom platform. We would be separating the teacher and the pianist, isolating them away from each other, but on a moat or an island that's at the front of the room away from the kids. And we're going to be, because it's hybrid, either we'll be teaching in person and online at the same time, or one immediately following the other. Because after classes, there needs to be 60 minutes of the whole space needs to be cleaned before the next group of kids can come. And that also accommodates that the departing students don't interact with the arriving students, right? It's all an enormous logistical puzzle. I've got some specs in here from the CDC around how long different cleansing things have to be on a surface for it to be effective and all that kind of thing. So, you know, that's our plan. I'm really hopeful that it can come to pass. And it is a nightmare, but I feel like we're moving forward. And if we're being very, as an organization, being very conservative and very rigid about how we do this, so that we don't have to shut operations again. So if the kids in cohort groups, if somebody in a group gets sick, that whole cohort has to come home for 14 days, but we've protected the teacher and the musician enough that they don't need to. So all that, we're working on waivers for for participation. We're working on like a covenant, I guess. Courtney, are you telling me I only have 2 minutes? Probably.
Just one more to go, please. One more minute.
Yeah. Okay. Well, then I need to switch gears really fast. I'm going to go over here to our education and community engagement. We've made basically what I heard Rachel say. What we tried to do immediately on the education and community engagement side is meet our partners where they are. What we want to still provide services to you. In what way do you need them? So we've been working on Teams before school got out, we were working with HISD offering live classes via Teams. We did a actually quite successful teacher workshop for dance educators on May 30th. And I have to say, a silver lining is that normally we would have done that in person, which is amazing at the Houston Valley Center for Dance. But at the same time, it's really limited to people from the greater Houston area. We had people attend from around the world. And we really focused the sessions on, you know, what resources can we provide teachers when they're having to work in these, either having to work virtually, their students are in small spaces, choreography maybe becomes something that we're focusing more digitally. So that was really, I think there's silver linings in here. This website that I'm showing you is one of them. Having 24/7 access to Houston Valley creative and educational resources has been a dream of mine for many years, and COVID is making that dream come true. Yes. And I think one more thing before I turn it over is that, you know, the field trips, according to TEA, are one of the last things that'll happen. So we're exploring right now how we can make digital field trips in the fall with fingers and toes crossed, that we can have real field trips in the spring. Thank you for listening, and I'm happy to answer more questions and share any resources.
Awesome, Jen. Thank you so much for that deep dive. And just as a reminder, anyone can put some questions in the chat if you've got questions for specific speakers or just questions you'd like us to immediately address when we get to our Q&A, which is coming right up after our last but not least speaker, Alice.
Yes, that was amazing. Jennifer, thank you. You know, MECA is a multidisciplinary classical and ethnic arts education program. We also do a performance series. We have visual art, exhibits and festivals, various things. But what happened when they shut down the city is we lost all our earned income, and never realized how much we depended on that day-to-day basis. And I know we're not new. I mean, I'm sure every one of you experienced that. And so we were totally clueless about virtual learning. For 43 years, we've been doing in-person instruction. And so we had to learn very, very quickly. And fortunately, the staff didn't depend on my expertise, and just got it together. And we started developing a daily show on our Facebook of one of the teachers giving a class. One day it might be Mr. Lopez giving ballet folklorico, Jesucita in Chihuahua, or the next day it's our percussionist giving a class. The next day might be our ballet teacher giving a class, our visual art teacher, etc. And we did that through April and May. But then after a lot of meetings and discussions, we decided we were going to go ahead and go and to present our summer program at both sites, because we now have Mecca, which is on in the 06 ward, and then we're also managing um, programs at the Talento Bilingüe, the Houston building. And that particular building closed completely. We could not use it because it's a city building, and they were not allowing those buildings to be open. But they did finally give us permission to open for the June 8th program. Also, in between that, we were making videos for CASE programs and for other education entities that were needing arts education presentations. One of the other one of the things that we had to discuss when we were beginning, and the staff was doing this from home, but beginning in May, we came back to work. We had to sanitize all of the building, not just classrooms, but the administrative. So it was three floors of cleaning and sanitizing that our maintenance staff had to prepare for the opening of June 8th. We looked at various rules on summer camps from the state of Texas, the CDC, you know, to make sure that we would follow all those guidelines. We used the YMCA as a resource because they were already doing in-person programs throughout the city and in all of their, most of their different buildings. And we had a lot of discussion also because we're a United Way agency. We, got to talk to other colleagues in that field in terms of summer programs. We used a method that we had reviewed several times that actually came in. They were required. We have a tent out front, and the parents drop the children. They do not get out of the car. They wait to make sure we're going to keep them. The temperature is taken. We sanitize their bags. Purell their hands, and then, we make sure they have a mask, and then they go on up to their classroom, and their counselors waiting for them to take them, and we have them separated into different grade levels. Our rooms are very large, but we can only allow 8 students per grade level because we had to keep them 6 feet apart. And so everywhere in the building, you'll see arrows directing students how to get from one side to the other. And it's kind of crazy because it'll look like, why am I having to go all the way across this way when I'm just going across this way? But basically, it only took a few days for them to get used to it, and they moved on with it. And then in each room, they have their spots where they have to stand, or they have their chairs and tables separated. We do not allow them to, usually the lunch hour and the snack hour was always a sort of a social gathering, and but they can't do that. We keep them in their classrooms to have their lunch also, so that we don't have, 60 kids in one space. Um, Obviously, we have a lot less numbers than we would normally have. At Mecca, normally we would have anywhere from up to 150 kids at the Dow um, space. We have counselors, youth counselors for each grade level. They're when they arrive, they're with them and they stay with them all the way till they get picked up. We also increased our hours. We used to do 9 to 3, and in order to help parents who were in great need of sending their children away for a little while, uh, we do 8:30 to 5:30. Um, there's some art forms that we're not teaching, but was always great about our summer program was that the kids were exposed to so many different art forms, and the idea was that hopefully one or two of them would, take interest in a particular art form, and that, then they'd want to stay for the after school program, and many students have become year-round students in that manner. Um, for example, tango. Um, we they can't do couple dancing. Ballet folklorico, they cannot do couple dancing. Um, so some of the choreography has to be changed. Um, and I think as an instrumental teacher, I I'm not teaching, but I think it's it's very hard to teach instruments without touching the kids. I mean, you could do it. I mean, you have to do it that way. But a lot of instruction in as an instrumental teacher is helping the kids, forming their embouchures, making sure they're breathing correctly, et cetera, et cetera. And so, that's a little hard. Or, their left hand is it correct? Is they're not doing this, or you have to touch them and push their hand down, or so that I think is probably the one difficult part of teaching in person or even virtual. um, Let me see, we have a COVID counselor, and all day that person just makes sure that everybody's following the rules, even releasing the kids out of the classrooms to go to the next classroom, so they're not all bunched up in the hallway. She or he tells them when they can walk and when they can go on to the next class. Also make sure that we have a certain period where everybody washes their hands and we take their temperature again. Um, then they go on to their next class. In between this, when the kids leave, then the the teacher and some maintenance staff start cleaning the rooms for the next group, sanitizing the rooms in between those. And this is done all day long. I would say the greatest expense we're going to find when we finish this program is supplies, and they're
Just want
not
to let you,
easy to
one more
get.
minute, Alice, one
Not
more minute.
so we've been successful. We have had one incident of a maintenance person who was exposed to a COVID um, person that he was not aware of. But as soon as he was, he informed us. We had to tell him, go get your test and you quarantine for 14 days. Uh, but then what happened is the two other people working with him also had to go and get their test and quarantine for a period of time. And that's where there's some discussion of differences CDC says you have to quarantine so many days. And the state says something else, and that's a little difficult to work out. But all three were negative. And I know that the YMCA person said that that was one of the more difficult things of in-person programming is, you know, you're doing everything that you should be doing and making sure that things are sterilized, etc., distancing. But people, when they go out, you can't control what they're doing. And this was a simple thing. He was sitting in the car with his cousin, no mask, for 10 minutes.
Mm. Yeah.
And
Thanks
then he
so.
finds out, you know, that 2 days later that he had COVID. So I would say you may have to expect that on you have to shut down sometimes, sterilize everything, and um, open up again. And I think it's going to get worse now with this spike.
Yeah.
Um, so it's just a new way of having to teach. It's not the best. You know, I didn't even talk to you about our performance series, how many times it's gone on and off, on and off.
Yeah.
Um,
I
anyway,
bet. Thank you so much for that insight. And I think we're all feeling that way, that this is a challenging new
one
reality. So I
last
really
thing.
appreciate you
But
sharing. Go
one
ahead.
of the things that I did was I had masks made for all the kids, so they're not these plain ugly things like I have on. We had very colorful masks made because a lot of kids don't like to wear them. But we figured if they were artsy, maybe then they would wear them, and they've done very well.
That's awesome. Thank you so much. That's a fantastic idea. I'd like a colorful mask too. And now we want to move on to any questions that the audience may have for our great presenters. So feel free to raise your hand, to jump in, to type into the chat box. That might be the easiest way. It looks like we've already addressed a few questions in the chat box here.
I have a question for Alice.
Yes.
And that is, so just to clarify, you are having kids switch rooms during the day?
Yes, because we let's say we have 8 classes within that time frame, and we can't change every teacher and move them because they rotate amongst these different teachers every day. On Monday they do a certain set, and then Tuesday they do another set of rotation. Um, so yeah, it's a lot of cleaning.
I mean, that's one of our, floor is a big, in dance, your droplets or the kind of all the different kinds of droplets that you have all end up on the floor. So like that
Yeah,
time to clean in between is a real
yeah.
challenge.
We have to mop all the dance rooms. We have 3, and we have to mop each time.
Looking for my raised hand function.
Yeah, here, let me, Rachel, do you mind if I ask the question from the chat box first, and then we'll jump onto yours? So in the chat box, I've now seen 2 questions that will loop into one for Jen, it looks like. Jen, could you say a little bit more about the technology you're using? It seems like people want to know about the integration between teacher and music, and as well as for streaming, is the 2 questions I see.
Streaming. Okay, so the technology for what we're doing is there's these, basically it's a juncture box, and so now that the teachers are teaching in the studios, they have a wireless headset, and that sound goes into the juncture box, and then the sound that from the pianist. So ultimately it'll be, or not ultimately, hopefully within the week, it'll be a mic from a piano in the studio. But right now it's the Zoom feed, the pianist Zoom feed, then goes also into the juncture box that the teacher has, right? So then teacher, and this is how much technology, I mean, I don't really know what's happening, but teacher and musician go into the same place, and then that's the audio that goes out to the students. So for anybody who has taken a dance class, teachers like to go 1 and 2 and with the music or whatever, and it's all off the place. They couldn't really do that without that. So
What's
how it's really not it's old-fashioned electronics, actually. It's not you know, cloudy internet-y things.
And Rachel, what was your question?
You said what is going to change this week? Hopefully this week, what?
Hopefully this or next week that we'll get pianists in the same room as the teachers, so that then they can actually play piano. I mean, some of them have acoustic pianos at their house, but others are, you know, playing all digital, but that they be in the same space. And then the mic from the piano, right now, one of the pianos is getting mic'd, so that the mic cable can go into the juncture box. But then it's all these things about, which I don't know that much about, like this cord has to be able to adapt to this cord, has to, you know.
So right now they're in separate spaces.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
But
that's how it's been most of the, since the spring, since we started to do live class, well, they're live Zoom classes, is that musician and teacher are separate.
And the pianist is going into the juncture box, or is the teacher going into the juncture box?
Both. So we
They're
use
in different
two
spaces.
Zoom accounts, 2 Zooms for every class.
Okay, there you go. Because I'm like, I don't understand.
Yeah,
Okay.
2 Zooms for every class.
I
And
see.
Jen, what type of cameras are you using? Are they stationary? Are they iPhone? Or do they follow the teacher?
Stationary. I wish they were following.
And are they any sort of special camera, or are they just?
I mean, our IT ordered them, but they're an HD webcam.
Sure. Okay, great.
This my laptop that I'm in right now is a decent webcam for what we're doing. But we don't need this much computer to broadcast a Zoom class, so we have webcams and little computers.
Great. Okay, awesome. Rachel, did we get your question, or did you have a separate question? Okay, we got your question. I saw chat come up in the chat, and then Carol, you just raised your hand. So let me ask the question from the chat. I'll just take these in order. How, panelists, are you keeping community and parent voice in the planning of your reopening? And then we'll move to Carol's question.
We did a survey very early on, maybe April, to see, maybe early May, to see what parents were thinking they would be willing to do. And then we drafted another one to send out. And as we were about to send it out, the world changed overnight. And so that one has not gone out, but trying, and the young people that we have right now in our virtual classrooms, asking them, what do they want to see happen? What do they think need to see happen? As far as teachers, in keeping them in the conversation, right? We're fortunately a part of Arts Connect, so that has been helpful. And then we're also connected with young audiences, so that has been helpful because they're having some of those conversations for us.
Awesome. And either of the other two of you like to weigh in on that question? Jen?
So we are going to send out a survey. I was going to do sort of a generic one, and then I was talking with our marketing and PR team here, who are also thinking that way in terms of audience members. And we as we hashed it out, we really realized that we needed to really present our plan more specifically, to then ask the specific questions about, because I think for us, what we're able to offer the youngest dancers versus adult dancers versus the professional program dance, there's different populations needs, like we need more targeted surveys. So my hope is to get that out to them next week. And then we are going to host this is one of the things that I think this COVID has, the use of Zoom to really create town halls for people is great. We're going to host a town hall for our families to see, to present our plan, to take questions, to take suggestions, and that kind of thing.
And one of the things we did is we had a town hall meeting, and also virtual, in person and virtual, before we started. And even within the staff, we just had to decide which way we wanted to go, virtual or in person. And in person won in terms of the number of people who preferred that. So I wanted to say thank you. I have to leave to another meeting, Thank you for including me. And, you know, if you want to ask any other questions, I'm going to put my email down here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for being here today. Awesome. All right. Well, if anyone else has any other questions, please jump in with them now. We are coming up near the end of our time. Just give a little bit of good education wait time here to make sure everybody. Carol, did we address your question adequately?
Yes, it's sort of a lack of understanding, I'm presuming. So yeah, it's fine.
Yeah, it sounds like Jen's got some fancy technology people over there that we all need to go talk to them.
Oh, good.
Well, it's not that fancy in the end, I don't think. You know, like that's the end. I don't think it's like,
That's awesome.
you know, it's like electronics, you know?
My confusion was you have a pianist in one room and dancers in the other room and run 2 Zooms at the same time, and they.
So this is right now, everybody's in their own space. So teachers are either here or at their homes, pianists are at their homes, students are all at their homes.
Okay.
So the teachers, or we set up a Zoom account, a class Zoom account, and then there's a pianist Zoom account, because the pianist Zoom has to go into, that's the sound that goes into the class Zoom. So one of the Zooms we're using only as carrying the sound. Does that make sense?
Yes, I don't, how do the 2 Zooms work together at the
They
same?
they go into the juncture box together, right? So there's a cord that goes from the pianist Zoom computer into the juncture box. So that the audio from teacher, audio from pianist join, and then once they're joined, they go out into the class Zoom. You know,
Yeah, it basically sounds like you're using a mixer,
probably
an audio mixer. Yeah.
Yeah, right. It's just yeah. And but then we'll simplify slightly if they're in the same room.
Of course.
But
yeah.
But we'll still we decided we're still miking them, because otherwise, you know, those studios, dance studios don't have a whole lot of, unlike sound studios, they don't have, the sound just goes all away if you don't mic them.
Rachel?
And panelists or anyone, regarding temperature taking when your folks enter the space, we've talked about that as well, but the efficacy of that, any thoughts? Disposable thermometer, I mean, how is it, because we know that sanitizing is going to cost a lot. That's going to be, like Alice said, one of the biggest expenses is sanitizing. But then the temperature taking, any thoughts about how you guys are managing that? Okay.
I think Jen is bringing up.
Texas Children's gave us these ones, right? The ones that they're no touch.
They gave you that.
Well, I don't know how. Actually, you know what? I shouldn't say that.
Okay.
Somehow these
Like,
appear
wait a
to
minute,
me.
how does that work?
Somebody else in my organization in a meeting said, "Oh, hey, I have 2. I got
Okay.
these 2 for the, you know." So I say it's that, but
Good investment.
they appeared on my desk.
Yeah, on the head like that from a distance. Those are great. Yeah.
So my thought, I have only 2, but my thought was we would have one at every of all 3 of our entrances.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay.
But yeah, when I was going to MD Anderson, that's what they did to us every time I went. So.
Right.
Caroline?
Rachel, okay. Yeah, Rachel, at the Museum of Fine Arts, we have these devices that look a lot like iPhones, and they're on tripods. They're mounted on tripods, and you stand about 6 feet or maybe a little bit less away from them, and it scans your body temperature.
Ooh.
So that's kind of nice, because with those guns, sometimes you have to get fairly close.
Mm.
Caroline, can you share what that technology is with us?
I will. It's going to take a while, so I'll get it to you. I'll get it to Joseph later, but yes, absolutely.
I also like that it just stands there and that somebody doesn't have to manhandle it.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. 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 Mm-hmm.
We have another question in the chat here. Jennifer, have you found it harder to teach technique while on Zoom, and how did you get around safety of students at home, around the issue of student safety at home?
Well, definitely, right? I mean, one of the things that, dance teachers love to be with their students. They love to touch their students. They, when you can use it, great imagery all you want, but sometimes when you're going to get the change that, just as Alice was saying, the change that you need by touching them. And then also there's concerns about, so the teachers all crafted classes that could be done that didn't travel as much. When we've been working with some folks at Methodist, and there's also an organization called the International Association of Dance Medicine Science or something like that, making recommendations that instead of, jumping should be done in tennis shoes and not just in your regular slippers, because, here at Houston Ballet, we have sprung floors and that's healthy and all that. But so that's an adjustment. We're also suggesting that they can use a yoga mat for a little bit more cushion as well. But sure, we had a student who got an injury. One of our HB2 students, our Houston Ballet 2 students, got an injury early on in this whole home process.
Yeah. Thanks for sharing. I want to just jump in really quickly because I know there's going to be some magic sorting process that likely will happen in about 30 seconds. So we're about to move into the second hour. Thank you so much to our panelists. Really appreciate what you had, and thank you for the great questions, everyone. If you've selected a different, yes, claps. If you've selected a different group, you'll actually have to go click in an email you got to that other group. But